What's up, everybody? Joe Ringen here. I'm an author. I wrote a book. It's an epic fantasy book. It's called The Ballad of Ages. Check it out if you like epic fantasy, or if you just want to support my hobby of writing. But that's not why I'm here today. I'm here to bring you another book review. I like to read a lot besides writing, and I like to bring to you as the viewer some books maybe you haven't heard of before. Basically books I come across on the internet that I haven't heard of before, and I like to bring them to you. Maybe this one you have heard of before. I think it's pretty popular in the sci-fi world. I've never heard of it, but I was put onto it by, I want to give a shout out to this YouTube channel I found. It's really cool. It's called SF. Hold on. SF Words of Wonder. This, I don't know his name, but the dude that does this channel, he finds the gnarliest books from like the 70s and stuff, and they're pretty cool, and he gives good reviews. I found a bunch from his recommendation I'm excited about, and this is the first one that I found from his channel that I've read. I was excited the library had it, and I got it and read it, and for the most part I liked it. I'll talk about why here throughout this video. But yes, Patternmaster, Octavia E. Butler. So I'll show you since I still have it. It's a pretty short read. The premise, the idea is really cool. That's what hooked me on it at first. So the plot is simple and basic. That's not what carries this book, in my opinion. The setting and the ideas are incredible, fascinating. The plot is cool, but it's been done before. We've all read it before. We've all seen this movie in different settings. But man, the setting is super awesome. So I'll talk more about that. But so basically, the plot. There's the Patternmaster. Think of him like the emperor of the galaxy. His son, he has a bunch of sons, right? And fast forward, this part's not a spoiler because it's like the very beginning. So he's like sick and dying, and he has kids, and a few of them. Oh, what is going on with this? Sorry, guys. Okay, so the two sons that are the most powerful, they grow up and they are sort of jockeying for the throne, to inherit the throne. So that's like a kind of a high level. There's a little more nuance to it, but that's basically the gist of it. So, but then I'll talk more about the setting and the world and the technology and stuff, and that makes this story really cool. And probably what makes a lot of people love this, because it's a very popular book. I see it online all the time now. Now that maybe that's just Google, my algorithm or whatever. but I know for a fact Octavia E. Butler is a very popular writer. So I'm guessing this is a famous book that I just have somehow overlooked for a while. Okay, so the main character, his name is Terry. I call him Terry, or in my head. And so he's like the good guy. He's one of the sons of the Patternmaster, and so we follow him. He like graduates from school, which is kind of like where you learn how to harness your power or harness the pattern, and then so he moves on from school, and then through some wheeling and dealings. Well, okay, so I need to describe a couple other things, otherwise this won't make any sense. First of all, what is the pattern? So the pattern is the coolest part of this whole book. This is what kept me turning pages, because I needed to learn more, and I loved how the pattern operated in this world and how things just centered around it. So the pattern is a web. Think of it like a telepathic web where people link to it. Everyone that can links to the pattern, like telepathically. So they can sort of like talk to each other telepathically. They can affect the world. Like, so it's, I hate to always use Star Wars as like a baseline comparison, but everyone knows Star Wars. So the pattern is a lot like the Force, but it's way cooler. But think of it like the Force. So it's kind of like this invisible power that people can use to manipulate things around the world. But it's much more than that because everyone is linked to it, and they have various like skills within the pattern, and some people are more, they can communicate better than to each other because they're more on like a certain part of the web, or like, so it's, Octavia Butler does a much better job describing it than me, so just read the book. But it's cool. So then the Patternmaster is like the fountainhead. He's the delta, or the what the heck is the thing called where, yeah, the delta where the river meets or starts or whatever. Okay, anyway. So he's like the source of the pattern. Everything flows to him. So he can hear everyone's thoughts in the pattern. He can talk to everybody. He knows what's going on at all times because he's the source of the pattern. Everything flows to him, and everything flows from him. So he's kind of God in that sense, but only with the pattern. So he didn't create the world, but he's like the CEO of the pattern, kind of. But he's very powerful too because of that, obviously, because you can, as we find out, you can hurt people through the pattern too, because you can manipulate their chemistry and things. Anyway, so that's why he has so much power, and you can't just like overthrow him because he's got all the power. But he's dying, so then, of course, his sons want to inherit it. And it's not just like the eldest son gets it by birthright. It's the most powerful gets it. So these two, Teray, the main guy, and then his brother, his name is Karanzi, they're the two most powerful, and they sort of fight for it. But that's not where the story starts. The story starts with Teray. He ends up in the house of his brother Karanzi. I won't describe the whole thing, but the house. So the other part of this book that was so important and so like fascinating too, there's a strict hierarchy of like a social structure. Not quite like a caste system, but it's sort of. So like more like medieval, like a feudal system type of thing, but to the nth degree. Like it's much more than that. It's very sort of like Japanese kind of. That's the vibe I got. I haven't studied a ton of Japanese society to know, so I could be wrong, but like that's what I thought of while reading this book. You have like the house, the lord of a house, and he's got his serfs and peasants, but it's very strict rules. Like you can't I should say, so there's another class of people in this world. They're called mutes. And that's because they're called that. They can talk. Like at first I thought they couldn't talk, but they can talk, but they can't telepathically talk because they're not connected to the pattern. So not every human being has a link to the pattern. They're not connected. It didn't really explain like why some people aren't, some people aren't, but basically that's it. So like if you're not connected to the pattern, you're a mute because you can't telepathically talk. So you're a lesser class of person in this world. So then, you go to the house, Karanzi's house, he's the head, and he's got all his people, his servants, his wives, his children, whatever, and the mutes that are in his house, kind of the peasants, servants. And there's all sorts of these houses out there, and there's alliances between houses. There's enemies, and they kind of fight each other, and so very interesting. So that's a huge part of this story. That's the society that everyone lives in, and the pattern is above that and operates at all. So it's very interesting to read about that. Again, the story itself is just kind of we've seen it all, we've heard it all a million times. Two sons fighting each other for the throne of the world. Cool. But within the setting, it's fascinating. I recommend reading this book. There's more I'll say about it too, but there's also another cool thing about the setting in the world. There's also another race of people, or like aliens, I think, or mutants or something. They're called Clayarchs. So they're like mutant people. They have, I think, like a bunch of arms and legs or something. But they're like the mortal enemy of the humans, or the Patternists, really. I don't think they have any gripe with the mutes, but Patternists for sure they don't like. And so they're always in the background too, fighting. And when the main characters are traveling through the forest, the Clayarchs are in the background, and they are with like laser guns, and so it's a hostile world, very much so. And so the Clayarchs are there too. So yeah, that's pretty much the story, but what makes it so good is like the ideas and the themes, and in the book really it's very clever, and kudos to Octavia E. Butler. She very like furtively talks about a real world important topic, like theme of like class society, or like the pitfalls of a society with a very rigid social hierarchy structure. Like, this book demonstrates those pitfalls very well, and you don't necessarily like think you're in like a classroom learning about this when you're reading it, but at the end of it you're like, oh yeah, like I'm glad I don't live in that society. Obviously there's some issues with our society, but compared to this one, this is cake, what we live in. So a lot of pitfalls there, but the part of it, sorry, my brain's kind of crazy today. So what was so terrifying about this, terrifying in a good way, like a good warning, but when you really step back and think about it, it's kind of terrifying. When you learn about this world, is the people with power, with the pattern, or the most power with the pattern, they tend to be the rulers of the house, because power rises up, see, subdue, whatever. But they cling. What's terrifying about it is, and sad, really tragic, is instead of using the power of the pattern that they have with the pattern, instead of using that as a vehicle to make the world better for everyone, which they easily could do. The pattern's a very powerful tool. You could make the world better for everyone. You can make it so the mutes weren't just living in dirt and had to work 20 hours a day just to survive, to eat scraps from the house, kitchen. They could make the world better. They could, the sky's the limit. But they don't. They choose to cling to their seat of power, to keep the rigid societal hierarchical structure the same, so that they can retain their seat of power, because they don't want the world to be a better place for everyone. They want the world to be a better place for them. And that's such a theme of humanity, not just in this book, but in our own world. I mean, even in like the workplace, like workplace politics are like that too. Like, it's just a trait of mankind to be more focused on retaining your own seat of power than helping others with benevolence that your seat of power allows you to have, but you don't spread the joy and the wealth. And, if you got to think about it too, if I was in that position, if I had all that power, I like to think I would be nice about and help people, but I don't know, I'm no different or better than most people in the world, so I would probably fall into the same trap. So that's what's scary about this. But like I say in all my videos, that's why reading books is so awesome, because we get to learn about issues and learn and see the consequences in fiction, so that we can figure out what is good and what is wrong, so then in the real world we can do the right thing instead of the wrong thing. So that's why reading is cool, man. Anyway, so that was the scary thing. The others, I wouldn't say the next thing is, I'm going to say is scary, but it's kind of scary because it's so... Okay, so this book was written in like the 70s or something. It's right... Hold on. 1976. Okay, this book was written in 1976. The screen's going crazy. There we go. So, the pattern is, when I was reading this book, I could not help but thinking the pattern is so eerily similar to the internet. I know I described it like the force, but it's kind of like the internet, because everyone is connected to each other through links. They call it's a link, and I don't know what that is, if it's just something with your brain chemistry, but in our world, we're all connected to each other with our cell phones. And so, we're all kind of like snooping on each other. We're seeing what their life. We're talking constantly. We can be sitting on our couch at 2 a.m. and talking to someone halfway across the world. That's like what happens in this book. That's like what happens in our world with the internet and smartphones. But and when I was reading this book, I'm like, it's kind of like the internet. This is cool. I can apply this. But then I'm like, wait, hold up. Back up the train. This book was written way before the internet, and Octavia Butler thought of this without having any exposure to the internet or smartphones. That's super cool. I love that. She must have been a very imaginative person to think of that, and then, 30 years down the road, here we are. So I thought that was very cool. It just goes to show she has a lot of genius and imagination, and that's great. Okay, so what I didn't like about the book, this one, take with a grain of salt, because personally, the thing that kept this from a perfect score for me was kind of like two things. The first, I'll just say, I don't like the writing style of this book. So what is the writing style? Very short sentences, straight and to the point. You probably can't see that. Just it's very just straightforward, short sentences, not like a ton of extravagant vocabulary. And so I say take it with a grain of salt, because that doesn't mean it's bad. And for some people, that would raise the score, because some people like that. For me, I very much dislike that writing style. I almost didn't read the book because of that, but the YouTube dude that recommended this said the story and the setting is so good, you got to read it. So I did, and I'm very glad I did. But I just don't prefer this writing style. I like musical prose. I like words that are placed for very specific meanings and flow musically, rhythmically, and I enjoy over-the-top vocabulary when it's done well and rhythmically, because then I can learn more vocabulary. I enjoy that personally as a reader. Some people don't, but for me, that's why I didn't score this a perfect. But I wouldn't say that should prohibit anyone from reading this book. So that's just one thing. I will say, before going to the next thing, this book, when I was reading it, I could not help picture like an anime. I think this like a TV show. This sort of felt like an anime, like like Dragon Ball Z or something. I'm serious. And that's cool. Like, I think that's very cool. Octavia Butler has a very, like, unique voice. She evokes imagery unlike anything I've read before with few words, which, I mean, that's impressive. That's good. I think that she's very talented in that way, and I think she could have evoked more imagery is my thing. But somehow, yeah, she, with very few words, placed a very distinct and unique scenes in my head. So that's awesome. But like, yeah, it did. It kind of felt like Dragon Ball Z or something, and that's cool. I think that's what maybe she was going for. Even though Dragon Ball Z didn't exist when this was written, but yeah. So that was one thing. The next thing was, and again, take it with a grain of salt, I guess. I think she left a lot on the table with this. What I mean by that is, I think it could have been so much more. And the thing to remember is this book is part of a series. So it's called the Patternmaster series. So I think there's like 4 or 5 books. And so it's hard for me to say this now because I wanted to know more, and I felt like there's a lot left on the table, but which could be fleshed out in the other books. So I'm going to read the other books because I'm so invested in this world, and I like really want to know what happens and learn more about it. So I'm going to read more of it, and maybe after I read the whole series, then I'll be like, okay, she nailed it. Everything I wanted from this is satisfied. But just on its own, on its merits, I felt like she's sitting on a gold mine with this, and I felt like it was. I felt like there's a lot left to learn, and she could have been on the heights of Dune or Foundation even maybe, but I felt like she left a lot that I wanted to know more, and I'm sure with the other books I will. And so stay tuned on that. But for this book alone, I gave it a 7 out of 10. A lot of cool imagination. The pattern is awesome and fascinating to learn about. Not my preferred writing style. And there's so much more that I wanted from this book. Hopefully the future books will address them. That's all. Go out and read this book. It's cool. Patternmaster. Octavia Butler. And until next time, you all have a great rest of your weekend and a good night.